Corwin, and why don't you all come closer where I can see you all? If we have a seat available up here. Yeah, well, either way, or you know what, I can have him come up here. Thank you, ma'am. All right, everyone. Well, good afternoon to you all. This is the Gordon Plaza Task Force. We have several agenda items to go over today. Is there an additional mic? If you can give Angela a mic so that we can have the traditional dialogue that we do, and I'll pass the mic across the dais should we need to. Angela, is that all right with you? Thank you. Okay, so I don't believe that Mr. Threat is here, but Mr. Montano, I think that you can provide specific updates that he has. Is TCA here today with us today? I don't see TCA. Not yet. I do want to mention that we do have Bayou Title with us today. Mr. Brent is here, and he will do a little bit of talking with all of us about, the closing process. And we also have a one-pager that we'll discuss as well about like all the different steps with the closing. And also, he's also going to talk about additional assistance that his office and other real estate experts can provide to all of you all when it comes to the next phase of trying to pick out a new home and things like that. All right. So with that, let's begin our agenda items. So first we have is everything finally solved with the moving expenses with TCA? Here.
Mr. Threat asked to pull the contract. I asked for it earlier today, so when I have the contract in hand, I'll provide it to everybody internally. I just haven't gotten it back personally. I'm not 100%. I think so, but I have to double check with my office. I haven't seen it come back yet. So when I see it come back, I'll know for sure where it was. But it's, yeah.
So if it hasn't been signed, it's only because of the process, not because not everyone in the chain to sign it won't sign it. So I think what Andrew's saying is that everything's going to get signed. If he doesn't have it yet, it's simply because it hasn't made it back to him through the process. But there should be no hiccups on everyone that needs to sign it, has agreed to sign it, and is going to sign it and will sign it.
Yeah, I think the question here is that we've been, Mr. Montano, I know you've missed the past couple of meetings, is that we've been saying that for the past couple of meetings, like it's all going to get signed, and then here we are in the next meeting that it's still not signed.
I don't know the answer to that, and I know I think that they got scheduled when I wasn't here, so it wasn't not because I didn't want to go, but I wasn't here with my calendar to schedule them, but. I don't know the answer to that in all honesty. What I can tell you is that as soon as Andrew knows, and maybe you'll know by this meeting or not, I saw an email go back and forth on it earlier. It will be done. But as far as the signing piece, it's all should be handled. It's just the process piece now.
Andrew, can you check to see where that's at and get us an answer before we leave? Thank you. Okay. Item number 2, which is it says temporary housing in the in what Ms. Amar sent in the agenda, but it's obviously the rental assistance piece. And we just received a full memo back from the law department on their findings with the rental assistance. I think that you all may remember that we had an additional a limit as to what could be provided for rental assistance, and that was at $7,200. And you all had asked, and myself and Mr. Threat had asked for the law department to go back and look and research to see if there was any way to get any additional funding, and particular because of inflation. When the federal legislation was written that capped it at $7,200 on whether there was any room to potentially grow because of inflation from 2014 and add additional monies to that rental assistance. So we got the memo back from the law department today, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Gregorian on his findings.
So we look back at all the relevant regulations, the relevant statutes. Everything at the state or federal level outside of the one statute that provides for 7,200 has gone to 5,250. So either they decided that they wanted to revert back to 5,250. I don't know what the federal government was thinking, but our state statutes allow us to adopt, like I said last time, adopt federal guidelines if we so decide. So because the administration's already approved it, we're going to stick with the 7,200, which is the highest amount that's actually available in either the federal or the state statutes and regulations. And the only way that the federal government will actually make a change to their rental assistance amount is through regulation. So nothing that they provided, nothing they've done since those statutes or those regulations have been put into place has made any change outside of apparently either going back down to 5,250 or there was just maybe some error or something where they didn't go back up to 7,200 like they could have. I don't know, like I said, I don't know what the federal government was thinking, but the highest amount available is going to be the 7,200, which is the amount that we advise that we stick with, because that's the maximum that we're going to be able to provide. And just to clarify too, we went through different handbooks for the different federal agencies to see if somebody had provided guidance on like one of their handbooks or FAQs or anything like that. And there's nothing. Everything has still stuck with the 5,250. The 5,250, I'm not 100% sure when they actually enacted it, but
it was in 2005. And so in the last meeting, we came back to indicate, and this is just for all people who might have missed that we understood that the federal government had already enacted additional legislation to bring it up to 7,200. And so because that transpired technically by Congress in 2012, and the federal government took it on again with a notification in 2014, we asked them to go back and see and verify if there was anything else that transpired, because a lot of inflation has transpired also since 2014. So we just are going to continue to hear these updates, and then we do want to speak to some things. So
again, while the federal statute did say the 7,200 and that's what we're going with, for some reason the regulation is still at 5,250, which would be the only changes to that statute would have been through the regulation, and they haven't made any revisions to the regulation that have been approved and that have been finalized. So when you go and you look at the final regulations that are in place today, everything that we found was 5,250.
Thank you. All right. Coming to the next agenda item, that is on the relocation costs. Now, remember, the relocation costs are separate to the moving expenses. That's what's being covered by a total community action. So on the relocation costs, I know that Mr. Threat was looking into this and having conversations with law about the pieces of the relocation costs. Do you have an update on this, Andy?
So with the relocation expenses, there's two groups. There's one related to the actual moving expenses, and then there's a set of expenses for any damage or issues with the property as you've moved. So with both of those, because there's a contract with TCA for the moving, those expenses, everything related to that will be done through TCA. And so the moving companies and everything like that, they'll be handling the moves, have their own insurance, have their own protection. Should anything happen to your property during the move, it would be done through the private insurance that the moving companies have.
That's on the moving piece, but what about the relocation costs that they had submitted?
So, again, with the statutes, with all the relevant, with everything that's out there, the relocation expenses are actually just the expenses for moving. We can provide the moving services under 3103, or 3104 provides for the relocation expenses, which are actually, again, it's the expenses related to relocating and then the damages to the property. The only thing that might be relevant, that might have been doable, would have possibly been the what is it? No, there was. would have possibly been the utilities and activation fees, but even those with, like, if you talk with Entergy or Sewerage and Water Board, my understanding is that transferring your services does not usually have an associated cost. So that would be the only relevant relocation expenses that would be possibly doable.
Sorry, I forgot I had a mic here. Andy, can you send me and Joe Threat and Gilbert a further memo on your research on that, just so that I can see it all in writing as to how you all came to that determination on really that being the only relocation cost that could potentially be addressed?
I want to go on record
Yeah.
as saying that we would like to move through the other agenda items, and we're going to come back to this relocation cost because we know that that's beyond inaccurate, because even the city went behind the curtain and came out with all those packets, and even those categories that are aligned there come from that legislation. And so we understand that utilities are a part of that, but that's not the only thing that's a part of that. We're going to talk about it more before we leave today, because this is the critical part. But we just want to advise legal to go back and look at that again, because we understand that a number of these costs can be taken care of any way that the city decides. We have already talked about understanding that there may have been the initial smaller lump sum. You were talking about up to 8 bedrooms being $1,900. Clearly, that's not going to suffice for the residents if they have perhaps maybe 3 or 4 bedrooms. We also understand that if you were talking about before, which even your own legal that you hired, in addition, advised not to entertain going back and forth with the residents around receipts and invoices. By the time we're done talking about, and I'm glad to see Bayou Title here as well, because we have some things that we want to walk through that we think are going to be helpful. So not only this process, but also Bayou Title, because we already know that they're coming prepared to talk about things that are within their realm. But there are some critical things that have not been cared for yet. And these things are connected. So we're going to talk about those. And we're going to come back to the relocation cost, because we're absolutely certain that that's not accurate. And we want to wait and come back to that. I want to give them a few minutes to engage here, but we would like to just share next on the agenda a few things that have to do with closing and moving dates, because we need to start from there and kind of work backwards so that people could really understand that the residents of Gordon Plaza are coming with the spirit of wanting to move this forward, not be antagonistic, but this process is antagonistic. So at the point at which we have to intercept, we will, but we're coming with naming some issues and some problems, but we're also coming with some clear solutions. And we want to put those on the table. And that's going to also require us to share some things prior to also engaging with Bayou Title. So can we go there next?
Why don't we do that?
Okay.
Because that's actually the perfect time, because that's agenda item number 4. So let's talk about, actually, Angela, hang on. Before we get to that, I think it would be appropriate, though, to talk about, because Mr. Montano has the information of the processes from when somebody, we have it all in writing now and very, one piece of paper, from when somebody says that, you know what, I want to accept this offer, to then how long it takes for that money to move from the city to actually where Bayou Title can now access it. And Mr. Montano has all the processes now, which are a little bit more than what we had initially received with information.
So sure, just in fidelity, I'll walk through each one of them. I don't know if the timeline changed necessarily, but so you all have just clarity on what we have to do on our side. First issue, owner accepts agreed upon appraisal price, goes to Bayou Title. From Bayou Title, it goes to the law department. I'm going to go through this one by one, and then in my next conversation, my next paragraph will tell you the timelines with that. It's not that long. It sounds like it is, but it's really not. Bayou Title to the law department, to Joe's shop, Deputy CAO of Infrastructure, to me, to Finance Department, to Bureau of Treasury, to the PDU. So those are all the steps we have to do for our process flow to be able to do that. Now, although I said that sounds like a bunch, what we estimate for that whole process is approximately 6 days. So what will happen is Bayou Title will submit the paperwork to the city. Law will have one day to review and sign off on it. Then PDU, which is Joe's shop, will add the payment voucher. Joe Threat will review and sign it. He has 1 day to do that. Then it'll come to my office. I have 1 day to sign it, review and sign. After my signing, then the process just starts taking off. Finance has 1 day to review and sign it. Then Treasury, all in that same day. And then PDU actually enters the invoice into Brass. The invoice is released, recorded, and then we inform property management about the pending active sale. So the internal estimate for all those internal processes for release are 6 days. We haven't done one of these yet, though, but we hope and we're optimistic. We've met internally for several hours over the course of this week to try to streamline this and kind of who's going to have the football through the process. And that was the best we could come up with for process flow so we can stay seamless as possible.
CAO Montano, can you go back to finance and pick it up from there and go through that section one more time?
Sure. So after I sign it, finance reviews and signs. Then Treasury processes the electronic transfer and the routing sheet. So that's where the money starts moving. Then Treasury lets PDU, which is the public delivery unit, know the electronic transfer information. That's just for our back end accounting measures. Then we enter the invoice in Brass. And I know some of this is internal conversation, but we just want to be as clear as possible. The invoice is then released, the payment's recorded, and then we inform property management about the active sale because they will now take the property, meaning they are owners of it.
Okay, so we understand that there's some steps in there regarding Bayou Title. So we want to talk through some things that have been surfaced as concerns, but we also want to come through and talk about some solutions. So we want to walk through those things that are really important as you examine that so we can see if there is anything about that, since it has not been done yet, that needs any tweaking, particularly as it relates to knowing that there are some residents that have reached out to Bayou Title to ask some questions. And in an effort to prevent some additional issues, which we know that Bayou Title is not going to be in a position to answer some of these things that have to come from the city side, which also impact some of the information that goes on to that buy-sell agreement document. So we want to take advantage of the fact that everybody's in the room at the same time right now and just walk through that part right quick, because that may help to connect what you have said to the ultimate thing that residents are concerned about, which is that it's already been named that people are in a position to decide when they want their closing date to be. But we understand that if we're talking about a closing date, when we left the last meeting, that's synonymous with the moving date. That's synonymous with turning your key date. So there's some things that have to practically be spoken about, and we need to just take it through the top. And it won't take us long, but we need to lean in together and talk through these things, because I can promise you, if it has not already happened, and I bet it has, that people are asking the question about their moving date. And that has to be resolved on this end with the city first so that we can mitigate that on this side, okay? So let's just walk through this for a second. Okay, I want to name, and Bayou Title, do you have a copy of one of the Louisiana residential agreements to buy or sell on you right now? Okay, what I'd like to do is just give you a sample of it. It's not anything different than what you've already started producing for residents, okay? And I think it's very important that we just name right quick a few things. So just bear with us, let's be patient. And let's also just know that the time we spend taking care of things here in this room are going to help us move through the process that much better later, to move it through even more smoothly, okay? So correct me if I'm wrong, this document is the same document that's used for all buy-sell transactions in the state of Louisiana. Is that accurate?
If there is a licensed real estate agent involved, it is mandated for residential 1 to 4, but it is the predominant form.
Okay, so thank you for that. So the first thing I just want to name is on this form, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this first page. I'm just going to go through a few things that are important to get us back to here. Okay. Stick with us. Currently, as it stands right now, there is no one that is signed on the seller side designated as an agent. And we want to make sure that nobody's name mysteriously gets put into that location and gets charged for that, because shit happens. We want to name that. Second of all, we need to know who the contact person will be on the buyer side. It's our understanding that, Mr. Brent, you're the person that residents would communicate with most directly, just as it relates to being representative for the title company. Is that correct?
I'm probably the initial contact on all of them, but then my wife Kathy and Donna Savoy work on a lot of them.
Okay. So whose name on that side would be present here? Is anybody's name, or is that going to continue to be blank as well?
The one up top,
Yes.
we're not putting anything up top.
You said no one's name will be at the top?
You're talking up top of the form.
Correct.
No, that's where you put the real estate agents.
You're correct. I understand that.
Yeah,
I just
no
want to
real
make
estate
sure nobody's name is going to miraculously just show up in that. Okay. Okay. I got it. Just look, I know it should be a no, but things
Well,
happen.
and if
Okay.
if
So I
may
just want to,
interject, I mean,
yes.
and I'm sure you've been talking to all we actually have sent out like 21 of these.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of them that are out there. So I mean, they're all consistent. They're filled out the exact same way.
Yeah. We're just naming. We want to make sure when the document goes back, that nobody else gets added to those blanks. We just want to name that. And I'm not saying that it's about you. It's just about the process, and we just want to name it. Okay. So we're naming it. All right. Let's go on to the next thing. If we turn to page 2, there's a section that talks about property description. We would like to request for the residents that when it comes to fixtures, that it can just be named, because there should be no confusion about this. There may be residents who decide that there's certain fixtures that they're not thinking about, they're going to move on with their lives. However, every resident has the right to take their items with them. And one of the things that we have named is we want this process to not add any unnecessary burden mentally, emotionally, or physically for the residents. So we would like to have it named prior to these documents coming out to every resident to figure out how to list 72 and a half different things that are in their house, from light bulbs to fans and such, that the city of New Orleans is acknowledging that residents will be taking their fixtures with them. They don't want to have to debate about a light bulb or a light fan or their washing machine. So we just want to name that, because we know that that can be acknowledged in the document prior to it going out to 67 people and having to do this back and forth. That would make the whole process that much
right.
easier.
I mean, they're going to be demolished. I think
Correct.
anything taken is just to help.
Yes.
in
Could
the-
could
yeah.
we just,
waste.
like, it would be impossible to capture 67 variations of what people's mindsets are.
Right.
I mean,
Mhm.
if you just put some language in there that anything within the structure that
That's-
they want to take.
That's correct. That's what we need.
As CAO just said.
Come on with
houses
the
are being
clarity.
demolished anyway.
Correct. So we're naming that out loud because that has not been cared for. And I just want to say this, and bear with us, because we come in with the spirit of moving this thing forward. Because look, I would love it if we could walk out this room and feel like decisions have been made and there's a process, because people have been so quick, and we need to acknowledge this. The residents have said they don't want any unnecessary delay. They're not trying to stay on the landfill. They want to leave. However, they're not going to be dragged through a process without care, and it put them in a worse situation than before. So thank you, because you got it. You understand that would be out of control to try to figure that out. And then somebody want to do a walkthrough later and say, oh, I don't see something's missing. The residents are saying that should they decide to take any and every fixture, that is their right to do. And we just want it to be acknowledged. And we don't want the city coming back asking where the light bulb and the washing machine is. So if we can just acknowledge that it's been acknowledged here, thank you. Let us move forward. Okay, I want to name that there is an indication here in terms of act of sale, and I'm going through specific things that need to be named in this space, okay? There's a section on here that talks about act of sale, and we know that the act of sale, talking about closing date, which is equivalent to moving date. Here's it's a quick question, super quick question. When the residents have received their offer letter from the city, which they have, They have an offer letter. They get to call Bayou Title and say, Bayou Title, if I choose, I'm ready to accept my offer. One of the things that would be super helpful is if the residents at that point, should they request a settlement statement just so they don't have any surprises? And I want to just name that one of the residents has called you and said you turned that around for them in a 10-minute time. They were so grateful that you were able to acknowledge, here I am with the clearance of my title. If there's any issue, there's no surprise. We would like to just make sure that should, all residents may not request that, but should they call to say, hey, I'm ready to accept, can you give me a settlement agreement document just so I can see if there's anything that had to be cared for? I'm not surprised. That's something that residents are asking.
Angela, just for clarity purposes, when we had people ask for what was on their title, we gave them a copy of their title commitment, which evidences what's there.
Yes.
As it relates to a settlement statement is not going to have any, it's not going to be meaningful until we get closer to the closing, because we need to have mortgage payoffs, other payoffs, proration of taxes, that kind of.
Well, let me ask it this way.
But we have provided to the council months ago what the fees are. So anyone could know that if I'm selling it for A and Bayou's charging B, the only other deductions are going to be whether there's a payoff.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm talking about something just a little different. What I'm saying is, for example, like and I know you got a lot of technical language that I might not have, so bear with me, like a pro forma settlement agreement, basically saying that if somebody has a deed outstanding or taxes that have to be paid, those are going to be extracted from their ultimate amount, correct? So what they're saying is, listen, before I even get over to you talking about paperwork and such, can you go ahead and name, because you've already taken initiative to pull those things up. If I'm calling to say I accept my offer, go ahead and let me know right now that I'm going to come in $10,000 less than I thought because I'm paying off these things, because that's going to come down the line, but you already have that information. So that puts, follow me, CAO Montano, that puts the residents in the best situation to say, yes. So when I come to you now talking, I have an idea of what should also be in this line here, a price line 42 or 43 that says this is how much you're about to get, right?
No, the 42, 43 is going to be the sales price.
It's going to be this.
Right. But
okay.
And what I mentioned was the title commitment is actually after we had done the title searches and the title exam back in November. Those are the commitments that which shows for each property owner in here who owns it, what's owed, and if there are any curative matters, what those need to be. So we can share that with any property owner at any time. So it'll say things like, maybe, now keep in mind, it's all dated November.
Yes,
now, obviously, as we move forward, we're going to update this.
Right.
But I mean, I can say that we're showing that there's 3 judgments, and there may be some owners in here that I've spoken with that are advancing through the process, and they can concur that when they reach out to me, we'll get their social security number and we'll try to distinguish right then and there whether the judgment, because judgments are filed under an individual's name. So if you have a common name, it could be against you, but it may not be.
Yeah.
So, between myself and Kathy and Donna, we'll sit there and try to resolve that to let them know that, hey, there's only one thing here or 2 things there, that kind of thing. So
I guess what I'm saying for this is that when a person opens this 10-page document and they go to page 2, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're going to see a number on this line that is equivalent to whatever their offer letter said from the city. However, when they call you to say, hey, I'm ready to accept the offer based on the letter, I would like to have that settlement document, knowing that, yes, there's interest on the thing and it might change up and down. They're all clear about that, but they want to have an idea. I might be thinking in my mind, I paid off this 10th. I just want to make sure. And they're pretty sure, like you said, this is probably going to be one of the smoothest situations on your end, but there's some things in between that could lessen anxiety for the community if they could just know that up front.
The only resistance on that would be, there's be some owners that have a mortgage and I'm not going to have any idea. All I will have is what the amount of the mortgage was when it was originally created. So I'd have no way of knowing what that deduction is. Until I get further in the process.
Yes.
And I get a payoff.
Yes. The key.
I'm trying to,
right.
not trying
no,
to
it makes
evasive,
sense.
but
I get it.
Because I want every property owner to have as much information as they can have.
Yes.
The problem is what I don't want to do is present something that tells them one thing and it ends up being something else. And then I have to explain why, because like I said, I haven't updated title since November. So if somebody went out there and had some other unpaid bill,
Yeah.
and I'm going to say, well, look, you're not getting X, you're getting X minus whatever.
Well, this is,
You know what I'm saying? So
this is
there's a
good. That
whole
we,
lot of
I get it.
That's why it's usually better as we get into the process,
Yes.
as I get more information. Look, I'm not trying to hide anything from anybody. The process we've done on 3 properties so far is when we send it out to the city to request the funding that the CAO was discussing earlier,
Mhm.
we're sending out documents to all the property owners as well. So they're
Mhm.
going to have several weeks to look at that to
Mhm.
make sure that it conforms with what they think it is.
Yeah.
But it's really difficult too early in the process because
Well,
we
understand.
only know so much.
Yes. And that's, and the expectation is with that understanding. We're just saying the more people can have their finger on the pulse during this process, the better it's going to be for everybody.
Yeah, I think that I think what Angela's trying to say is that, Brent, if there's any way to do some type of, I don't even want to call it a settlement agreement, but some type of draft
Settlement.
piece of paper with
Yes.
what it looks like initially, with all disclaimers on it that this number could change, provided to the owner along with the purchase agreement that has the active sale number on it, so that they could have the active sale number on it to verify that that matches with their offer letter, along with the draft settlement agreement, piece of
Yes.
paper, whatever we want to call it, so that they can see what it potentially could look like for them, with, as we're saying right here in this room, with every disclaimer that that number could change.
Correct.
But at least
understand
they have a little bit of an indication just right off the bat.
And I have no problem with that.
Okay.
But
Thank
what
you
I'm
for
saying
that.
is there may be a mortgage that says 400,000. So I'm going to put on there, you owe 400,000, but it was made 20 years ago and you only owe 20.
But that's okay, because the residents are saying, if it says that and they know it's different, then that's a red flag for them that something out
it's
there is not
also-
in order.
And it also may be a different mortgage
Yes.
company. That's because it's been.
That's great. It's
transferred
better
4
to
times.
know now. It's better to know it now than to get deeper into the process. And if it changes or people have to take action, it's better to know it now. That's all we're saying.
And actually, that's actually part of our process, whether it's with the Gordon Plaza files or just
Mhm.
any other file coming into our office. The moment we get a purchase agreement in, we're making contact with the parties
Mhm.
and we're saying, hey, we're showing you got a mortgage. We're showing you got this, we're showing you got that. And it may be even a case where, we'll have people say, well, wait a minute, I paid off that mortgage 10 years ago and
Right.
it just never got canceled.
Right.
So I don't want to put that you owe a mortgage on there when you paid it off. And now we're working together to get this thing canceled so we don't have to worry about it
Yeah.
anymore. So from the moment the property owner calls and says, I'm ready to move forward and accept this offer, that's all part of what we'll be doing,
Okay.
is talking with the owners directly, letting them know what we're finding
Yeah.
and going about getting everything together so that we can get some more specific bottom line numbers together for them.
Okay. That's hugely important. That's all we needed to know. Once they call, that's going to happen. So there's no surprises. They are fully aware that some on there may be off, and it gives them an opportunity to acknowledge it and an opportunity for everybody to get ahead of it, though. So the sooner people know what you all have, the better it will be for all. That's all we're saying. Okay. So we'll keep going. We're almost through it. So when it comes to the residents deciding that they are going to call, should they decide to accept the offer and move forward in that regard, we understand, kind of going back to this timeline, that some things are happening behind the scenes. So what I'm hearing you say, because we're going to keep going back to this, we're getting through it, I promise, is that from the time you get the call of resident says, I accept this offer, you're then what? Reaching back out to the city so that this process right here gets started?
No, at the present time, what we do is when we get a call from the customer, we put the purchase agreement together
Yep.
to have the customer sign it.
Yes.
At that point, when the customer signs it, we are then sending it to the city for the city to sign the buyer's side. We are also starting the process, as I mentioned before, getting the information, making sure, getting payoffs on mortgage. If you
Mhm.
paid your taxes and it's not showing up or whatever it might be.
Right.
We are working behind the scenes to do that. We don't want to schedule a closing date
Right. That's correct.
until we are all on the same page. And
That's
I
correct.
know I've got the 2 payoffs I need.
Mhm.
You went and took care of this thing and all the issues per se
Right.
have been taken care of.
Right.
Once we have identified a file that's ready to move to the next stage that they mentioned,
Yes.
that's when we go ahead and schedule a closing date. And then that's when the circulation starts. I start off the process, sending it out to everybody in the distribution list. And it goes from me to law and then to all the other people that Ms. Ratana had.
Okay, so
mentioned.
let's just address this because our ultimate goal is to clarify some things around closing and moving date, but we got to get through this. So as CAO Montano has walked through his step-by-step process here, talking about it being within 6 days, how long does that part take? And is that in relationship to this? It's all within the 6 days.
Yes.
Okay.
And one thing, well, wait a minute. I mean, just to give you an idea, when people reach out to buy you title and they express a desire to go to receive a purchase agreement,
Yes.
I will ask them, what their timeline is. Some people are in a hurry. Some people say, look, I need more time. So that's we just try to determine. From the time that we get the agreement executed and get the seller to sign it, the idea is for the city to sign that within a week. Okay. If that happens and everyone's ready to roll, we can probably pick a closing date and then begin the funding process that the CAO mentioned. And that ends up being, 6 days internally, but it's probably 10 days to 12 days total. So if someone reaches out to us and is ready to move forward, there's a reasonable chance that means that process could be all the way through in say 4 weeks. But we understand there's a lot of property owners that can't move that quickly. So we let them determine what the timeline is.
Okay, so that's where I want to go next. In the document, I believe it's the last page or second to last page, there's a spot where we understand, and I'd like everybody to listen very carefully because we don't want any surprises, is there's a point in here where it indicates that there's an expiration offer. So I want to just talk about that for a second. So the city of New Orleans has already provided an offer letter to the residents of Gordon Plaza. It's got your information on it so they can call you. Once they say, yes, I want to move fast, I need a little more time, you're considering those things. How do you determine what date goes in the expiration offer section?
Basically, what we allow is 1 week. I had 3 of them going out today where property owners had asked that we mail it. So because that's going to take time for it to go out and time for it to come back, I'm putting 2 weeks on those. But that's what we're putting. I mean, so basically what they're saying is the property owners are making an offer to sell to the city and the city has 1 week to accept. It's a formality. The city's already signified that they're buying the property, but we're just trying to get all the names on the same purchase agreement.
Okay. So
They have one week as a general rule.
Okay, 1 week as a general rule. So what we're just trying to understand is for impact's sake, because what that will say to the resident is basically, I have a week to review this documentation. Is that correct?
No, well, it's dated the day they asked me to send it to them. Most times that's been my experience that probably about half the property owners so far have gone to one of our offices. So when they express a desire to get the purchase agreement and they get it today, they probably sign it today or sign it by tomorrow. That's their choice. They don't have to, but that's how most of it's been. We've had a few owners say, look, I'm not really certain what I want to do. The 3 that I'm mailing out today, they said, just send it to me so I can see what it looks like.
Yes.
And then I'll decide whether or not I want to move forward. And and once they make that clear, we would probably give them another copy to change the dates because the dates become stale at some point.
Yeah. Okay. So that week time frame is for someone to contact you back again to say that they are ready to move forward in regards to whatever they have.
The 1 week is for the city to respond to the.
Oh, for the
property owners.
city to respond.
Right.
Yeah, I think this is where I think there's confusion. So this contract is from the seller. So from the residents saying that we want to sell the property for the price that is on it based on your
these
offer letter.
contracts can go either way. And as Helena just mentioned, typically a purchase agreement is a buyer making an offer to buy more times than not. We're doing the reverse of that. We're having the seller make an offer to sell.
Yeah. I
So
guess
the city's the one accepting, not the property.
Yeah.
So that means you have as much time as you'd like to review this.
Yes.
Because it's really that week time period or that time period for the accepting is actually on the city side.
So I guess what I'm trying to understand is on the city side, do you guys need a week if people have already accepted the offer,
Yeah,
where does
I
the
don't think
week
you need a week.
part come in? That's what I'm confused about. That's what I'm trying to get to that part. So you help me understand that.
I'll just tell you, I've never worked in the city, but I can tell you that I'm sure it takes time. There are other things they're doing. So it could be done in a minute, but we all have a
Well,
lot of things to do.
this
So
is what we need help
We
with.
just decided
Yes.
to give them a week because they figured there's more things that they got going, that they
Yes.
have going on.
We just, this is so helpful. What we're saying is, this is a significant process that could be expedited if we know who the point of, so when it's time for the city to move on this, to accept this, who is that person making that decision?
So when those documents come to the city, it will usually go to, I believe, the city attorney, who will then forward it to the contracts division. So it'll go to my supervisor. And because I've been involved with this, like I just got 4 more purchase agreement offers right now in email. So when I come in the morning, I'm going to look at them, make sure that everything is okay, go through and put it in the system like we need to, and then have it prepared to go to the mayor for signature. And I think the last one we did, the last 3, we got them earlier in the morning and I did them later that day, and then it went to the mayor for signature.
So the mayor has to sign all of the purchase agreements?
Correct. Anything that we do as a formal contract, the mayor needs to sign by ordinance. So the only difference is if we want to do a delegation, we have that opportunity, but the mayor has been very quick on getting these back. So we haven't had any real delays on those purchase agreements.
And Angela, if I can add to that, I think we have the process streamlined pretty well right now.
Mhm.
That once the owners express a desire to sell, and those who have dealt with us know that with either that day or the next day,
Mhm.
they have their purchase agreement.
Yeah.
We get it to the city right after that. And then if the property owners are ready to move, we're pushing that to where it could go as quickly as 2 to 3 weeks after that. So
Okay.
I don't know that you can deal with a public entity and
Mhm.
move anything any quicker than that, to be honest with you.
Well, I would just say that I think it's important to name that when people have chosen to be on the lookout for things with intention, it has expedited the process. Because of what you just said, that's where our concern comes in. And so we don't want it to be unnecessarily delayed. I also want to add these 2 things. And I think we need everybody to really lean in and understand this. Because of the nature of this struggle and where we are right now, we understand that there's a vast range of how quick somebody can move within the 67 properties. So it's not a surprise to us about those who reached out to you. The mayor's trying to expedite the process, trying to sign off on things and gather people together. That's not a surprise to us. What we are telling you is that the majority of the community that has to examine where they are in relationship to this, that may not be able to move in the same ways, needs answers to these questions. Because while it seems to be a case where we're saying it's relatively smooth, I'm also hearing you say that nobody's done this yet. You just said nobody went through that process. You just decided. So we're trying to understand, if there's 3 people who've gone through a smooth ass process, what has been that process? Because this process was just named and nobody went through it yet.
That process has begun.
Okay,
It-
so what has transpired that's not on that paper?
No, what the very first action on there is Bayou Title, which is specifically my wife,
Yes.
putting together all the documents and
Mhm.
to provide them with the city and to the property owner
Mhm.
for them to be able to examine every single document they're
Mhm.
going to sign at closing and to see the exact number that they're going to receive.
Mhm.
And we give that to Donisha and then also the treasury and everybody else, and then they circulate that among themselves. That process it hasn't been thoroughly completed, but that process began, I think, on the first 3 last week.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So what I'm hearing you say, and lean in, because we're gonna work through this. We coming out of this meeting with some answers. Is that where we are in relationship to that? You're saying for the 3 that you're talking about, you've already taken care of everything on your side, and you're waiting for the city now to take action. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. And
Okay.
those 3 closings are set to close on May 12th.
Okay. So tell me this again, just really quickly.
And just, excuse me, real
Yes, go
quick.
ahead.
The 3 that we're talking about for May 12th, one of them is a vacant lot, so we don't have to worry about relocation. The other one is a vacant house, so we
Absolutely.
don't have to worry about that either.
Absolutely.
The third one, however, does have a tenant living in it.
Right.
And the owner gave me the name of the property manager to get in touch with the to see about having the property manager discuss with the
Mhm.
tenant
Yeah,
how
we
much time
know.
the tenant needs. So that
Yeah.
third one does not look like it's going to be
Yeah.
able to take
Yes.
place on the 12th, but the other two
Yeah.
have been sent to well, all three have been sent to the city. The
Yes.
funds have been requested.
Yes.
The last email I got said that law, you're up. So I
Yeah.
guess the law department was sending it to the next on the chain.
Yes.
And that is what we're waiting for, is everything to be signed by the city and the
Yes.
funds sent so that we can keep our closing date of May 12th.
Yes. So the good news about today's meeting is it's going to help this process because like we said, we want all 67 property owners to be cared for. And clearly the activity by which and the interest by which and the questions that need to be answered for vacant lots look different. This demand is a fully funded relocation for residents in Gordon Plaza so that they can have access to everything that they need to move off the landfill. We are asking we already know about the 67. Come on now. So with the 67, we need everybody to be as smooth as the vacant lots. That's what we're saying. So now I'm gonna turn back again to the city because Bayou's like, look, those three moved along. We're looking at the third one with the tenant. And that's why I'm going to come back, Andrew, to the temporary housing. Because see, this process requires that third property, as they're moving through the process, we cannot leave the tenant out in the cold. So these things are connected. That's what we're caring for today. So I thank you for leaning in, people, because we're caring about human beings. That's what we're doing. So with that being said, let's go back to the city. So they've done their part. This process now should be in motion. What I'm hearing, well, let me not assume. Where are those two first two in this process right here? Do we know? They're in the law department.
The closing.
The closing
packets?
packages themselves for the first three.
I think also to the process of moving the money, if that takes 6 days, we're already on May
May 12th.
2nd.
Yes. Yes.
So I handle the purchase agreements. I will check on the status of the actual closing packets and tell you where they are. I've been doing the purchase agreements and then the rental assistance research and all that stuff. So I
Okay.
can find out and I can get an answer to Mr. Montano and Vice President Moreno.
So Andrew,
Disseminate to you guys.
because it's clear
Mhm.
that you are the person now who's been assigned this part, we are asking you to care for this with great vigilance. Because what we're saying is, and we're just trying to get to this part talking about the closing and the moving. You have to imagine, go there with me in your mind, the level of anxiety that it brings people to say, first of all, I don't have a dime in my pocket yet from this transaction. I'm in the process of looking for a home. I'm trying to entertain people, and I'm gonna get to some solutions on this with by title in a second, to actually secure a house and secure a contract around that. And we talking about the city of New Orleans is shuffling paper. That brings no confidence to people in terms of establishing a closing date, which you're also saying is equivalent to a moving date. That brings no confidence to people. So I know TCA up in the room as well. That brings no confidence when people have to decide to pick up the phone and call a mover and coordinate that stuff. People are really literally trying to plan this down to the T, and they cannot do so unless they know for a fact the city is doing their part. Because I'm gonna tell you, it's only gonna be so many times. They're not trying to lash out on Bayou Title, but it's a thing. Those have been the smooth ones, and they're not resolved yet. So help us understand, what can we do to help expedite that process, or just, I don't know the term that Mr. Threat used, eagle eye, whatever he said, to be able to focus on this till all 67 of them pass that desk with a level of urgency. Bird dog, come on with the tech. Can we bird dog these documents?
So there's only three that are in the final stages
Yeah.
right now. Like they said, 2 of those are actually vacant. There's nothing to do. The one with the tenant, as far as I said, I found out last week that there was a tenant in one of them. So
Mhm.
with that one, we've established a rental assistance process. What's going to have to happen with that is we're going to need to verify a couple of things just generally. And I think there's the written processes there. It needs to be finalized, but generally what we're looking for is some sort of current evidence of the tenant being in there. So you're looking for either the current lease or a current utility, but some documentation showing that, hey, I'm actually a tenant in this house because I'm not an owner occupant, I'm a tenant. So we need evidence of that. And then what we're going to need is we're going to need to verify the new rental location, the new location where you're actually going to be moving to. So you're going to say like, hey, I'm providing, this is my current lease. This is a new lease for the place that I'm moving into.
Yes.
And then once we've established that, once we know that the closing date is the moving date, we're getting that house, we're getting that vacant house. Everything is out.
Yes.
Everything's gonna be out of there. Then we're going to start processing the check. And like I said before, like we said before, we're going to waive the parts of it that require, hey, show us what the difference in costs are.
Yes.
Show us all these complex calculations. You're going to show us a documentation that where you're moving. We're going to verify where you're moving to. We're going to verify that you were currently staying in that location as a tenant. And then you're going to.
So stop for a second. Let me help you out with this. We're going to actually come back to this because I want to wrap this part up in terms of the closing and then come back. So, but thank you for those tidbits, because here's the thing. In the last meeting, I'm going to just say this and we're going to come back to it because I want to stay focused through these 6 bullets. I promise we get in there. Is that in the last meeting, it was already named. So I don't want you to feel like you got to it was already named that there's not an operational procedure in place yet for this.
Right, that's what we put together between the last meeting.
Okay, so we need to talk about that because that's still in draft form. And I also know, and this is not your fault, that there's been lots of conversations, Andrew, before you took post about red tape. So we're going to revisit those things real quick before we leave and help out with that process, because that operational procedure, we actually already went through it one time with TCA before all of a sudden people said, no, we're not using TCA anymore. So we're not going to go back into the red tape. And we can help with that because the residents have already named how easy and cohesive that can be. And the other people, Ms. Brown and the rest of the folks, walked through this thing and said all of those things are legitimate steps by the city of New Orleans, because TCA wouldn't have been able to do those things. So just let's pause on this for a second and come back to this. So with that being said, it is critical to know that in order for people to go about the process of determining a closing date and feel peaceful, we have to have certainty that this process is moving along, because we don't want people to be in a situation where they've negotiated a situation with a house and now somebody's like, hold on another week, hold on 2 more weeks because we're waiting on the city of New Orleans. Once they say we're waiting on the city of New Orleans, okay, I'm not going to go there. What I am going to say, though, is that something that could help this process a little bit, and I want to just say it out loud to the city because I need you to know, and then buy you title for help. So because if a person were in a situation and they had to go to a bank and they had to figure out what they're eligible for in terms of a loan to purchase a house, the residents of Gordon Plaza are in a different situation because they already have offer letters, but what they don't have is money. So what we need to have happen is a level of confidence for them to entertain conversations with people, because y'all already said closing date, you got to go. Ms. LeDuane said, what you going to do, put me out my house? You basically said yes. So what we need to do is create a safety net for residents, and we need to talk about the options for them. So here's number one. The one is that because we know the residents you've already agreed, you've given them the offer letter, we would like to request that there be a formal documentation verifying, separate from the little letter that came from the city and separate from, they can't run around with this 10-page document that clearly says the guarantee of funds so people could entertain real conversations about real property, okay? The other piece is we would like to request that for the residents, because we already know it's part of the process that Bayou Title is going to do their due diligence. They're not passing out money until that title is clear. So with that being said, we need residents to say, hey, I might not even have a down payment. I might not even have money to make a deposit. So what I need to do is I need to have a piece of paper from Bayou Title that says, this is real. We're not pretend playing with you in this conversation. This is for real. And should someone make an agreement with the residents, they can come with a piece of paper from an agreement saying, these people have agreed to sell me this house. We would like, through this transactional process within the title company from their escrow account, to be able to say, while you paying out the deed and paying out the taxes, go ahead and transfer this money over, because I don't have it. I don't physically have it in my pocket. And I know it's hard for some people to conceive in here because people are like, I'll just go out, I'll put a down payment. We are saying that everybody don't have money in their pocket. So if you're saying you can only get your money during closing costs or closing date time, I'm getting money and I have nowhere to go because I couldn't talk to people because I didn't have any money. But when people actually go to get a loan, they still don't have money, but they got this document from an official bank that says, take me seriously because I'm eligible. All we need is documentation from Bayou to say, hey, listen, this is real. This is real. The money's coming. And not only is the money coming, we want them to be in a position to say, if they have to put a deposit down, ain't nobody playing around with that. Like the residents are not going to play with that. They're saying, if I've been given $200,000 or $300,000 for my home, and these people are asking for $10,000 for me to get this house, transfer that money up out of the escrow to make this happen. So when closing happens, it can really happen for people. Like, then you don't have to worry about a whole bunch of people being like, hey, I need 6 or 7 more months in my house. And we're going to talk about that because everybody's situation is not the same. So can we just pause there for a minute? You see what I'm saying? Ain't nobody trying to talk to you if you don't have money. What house you gonna buy and what agreement people gonna make? And you talking about the city talking to me about my money coming. Like, all right. So let's pause and resolve this because this is truly resolvable.
No,
and I don't
agree
think
with you.
anybody has cared for this.
I agree with you, Angela. I think there has to be a path to get this done. I think I agree with you. I think it needs to be, potentially something through Brent and Kathy. I mean, what do you think that could potentially be that document that they could present as far as like, this is the real thing. This is really happening. They do have, they're about to have cash in hand.
Right. I mean, we have the offer letter, we have the purchase agreement. What you're not going to get is something from Bayou Title guaranteeing that the money's coming.
You know why? Because has not given you the money.
I understand that, but but I will tell you one step. Hold on. If I had the money, listen to me. If I had the money and I didn't have authorization to disperse money, then I'm still limited. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to be in the trick bag like anybody else doesn't want to be in the trick bag.
Yeah.
If the money is only the money when it's the money.
So what we're saying is, right now, the residents are in the trick bag.
Right.
And we're coming out, we got to get up out the trick bag.
Right.
So we're turning back to the city again.
Yeah, there has to be a path. Yeah. Okay.
It is that simple. This is the stuff.
Yeah.
And I need to be heard. This is the stuff that has to be cared for when we're talking about human beings. Because what's not going to happen is people hold a big old celebratory press conference talking about look at the people who got through when people still living on the land.
Yeah. No, agreed. And Andrew, what do you think as far as the city being able to provide something to the residents who have entered into a purchase agreement, who have an offer letter, so that they can provide something to the person that they're trying to buy a home from, so that there is there's often this proof of funds certification, right? As you're trying to buy property, what could we provide?
I mean, generally from the experience that I have doing the real estate, the limited like buying and selling experience that I do with that I've had with real estate, my understanding is we can, if the owners or if the current owners have, like, let's say a property that they're interested in, you work with your actual buyer's agent or the seller's agent, whoever it may be, and then you'll do a contingency agreement that'll specify like this: I'm selling my house right now, and my house is set to close on such and such date. I'm gonna go ahead. I would like to make a offer to buy this house, and then you can set the closing date for the same date and say like, I'm going to use, these are the funds that are going to be used to purchase this new house. That's the only process that I'm aware of off the top of my head to do this.
I think there's no doubt about, hang on guys. Hang on one second. So the contingency agreements, no doubt about it, that is certainly a path that can be taken, but oftentimes, even when you're going into some of these contingency agreements, you're still going to have to show, proof of funds. We also have the issue of the deposit piece. And so I think I don't understand personally And as you all know, I'm not the lawyer, right? But personally, I don't understand why the city couldn't provide some type of letter saying that we have agreed to buy this property. We are under this purchase agreement. We have stated that we will close on X date, so that they have something to potentially, pass the muster of the proof of funds.
I mean, outside of the purchase agreement, I don't know what else we would have done. That's usually that's usually the evidence that the house is going to enter into a sale. You have that purchase agreement saying, hey, seller, in this case, you as sellers are saying, hey, we're agreeing to sell this house. Would you like to pay the price that we want for it? We're signing off and we're saying, yes, we've agreed to buy the house at this price and we're going to move forward with it. Outside of the purchase agreement or just something confirming that we've signed a purchase agreement, which wouldn't necessarily be like, I don't see anything outside of that would be providing that evidence.
Helena,
This is stressful. This is
Right. The city as a whole. So whenever that property transfers hands, it's the city is automatically becoming a landlord for the property. There's not anything that we're going to be able to do to get out of that obligation, to get out of that necessity. The city does not have the resources to be a landlord.
We're talking
We
about
can't
I'm just naming, we're
Yeah.
talking about two different things.
I
So
understand.
I don't want to confuse them, because the latter is dependent upon the first, and we haven't resolved that. Let follow me. Here's the good news. If residents are able to go out and about and seek out houses and secure them, a lot of this latter part of the conversation subsides. But what people are ignoring is they don't want to contend with the fact that people have to have their money to entertain. And I know there's lots of different options for lots of different people. We're not talking about other people. We're talking about residents of Gordon Plaza understanding that for many of them, there is no next pathway forward until they are able to secure healthy housing of their choice. I want the city of New Orleans to understand they do not want to stay in these houses. They're not trying to drag it out and be in there for however long. All they need. Okay. And so either that's a document that says, oh, this is the line of amount of money or credit from my own money that I have, so that they can have that money that is already theirs transferred over or given to them to engage in this process. And I just want to say this, part of what makes this challenging, I understand, is because y'all ain't never did nothing like this before.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is this is the opportunity to problem solve this in advance.
I want to add
It's solvable.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's solvable. The other piece I want to add is, and Brent, help me out here. You're the real estate expert, but so often, actually, this is usually how it happens, that the purchase agreements, obviously not this one, but purchase agreements are usually subject to financing. There's that subject to finance clause. And so I guess where I'm going with this is that I get it that, if we provide a letter, Andrew, that it's not really, in your opinion, much more than the purchase agreement. But I think it's almost like when you have that lender letter that says like you're going to, have the ability to potentially get financing, but yet at the end of the day, yeah, your financing isn't 100% approved. That's why you have that financing contingency X right there. So if the financing doesn't come through, then the obviously the whole contract dies. I'm wondering if we can add like if there's a way that we could almost provide a letter that says like this cash. We have and it's pretty much stating everything that we have. We've got the purchase agreement, we have the offer letter, we have the legislation that shows that the money is in the bank and appropriated, that there's $35 million, that there's plenty of money that's going to be available to pay for all of this, to be able to pay for everyone's properties, to provide that, just to be able to show that they are going to have access to this money to pay for their homes. It's almost like Helena buying a house. It's going to be subject to financing. I have a letter from the bank that says like, you're likely going to be able to get the loan, but you don't have it yet. And if for some reason I don't get it, well, then my deal falls through, but it's subject to financing. So it's almost the same. Could we not do something like that?
I think, like I said, it's, go ahead. You want to?
Say that the answer, just hear me out all the way, Andrew. The answer is yes, it can be done. The key though is listen, because there's steps to this and I want to care for each step. All you're doing is providing a letter that says the people have accepted the offer and the money is coming. Separate and
And
apart
the money's
from that.
there and the money's
it-
there.
Well, so that's where we're going to go next. If the residents need money to be able to engage in this process, and lots of them will take different pathways, we have to open this up so nobody is constrained. If the money is made available to them, we don't understand why they can't access it.
Let's take let's take both pieces. Okay. Let's start first with go ahead, Andrew. Go ahead.
So I think we're gonna try to see, we're gonna look into it. I think it can be done, but we're gonna take a look at it and be sure. So it's as you guys have said before, this is a novel process. So what I'm gonna tell you is, Gilbert and I were speaking, he thinks we can do it. I think we can make it work, but I gotta look into it. I'm not gonna say.
Listen, okay, I get it. Let's finish going through the rest of this stuff because I'm going to tell you that
Angela,
the CEO
Angela.
Montano,
Can I comment?
there's another piece to this, but go
Hold
ahead.
on a minute. Obviously, you talk about two different issues.
Yes.
The issue as to whether or not everybody else thinks the money's out there is you need to close a couple of these. And until something closes, nothing's closed. And everybody knows that. I talk to people. I say, we're doing
Yeah, we-
all this Gordon Plaza.
Yes.
Oh man, that stuff. No, it's happening. It's happening.
Mhm.
But everybody's going to be a disbeliever until they see a couple of them. So I think that legitimizes a bunch of it.
I'm
Now,
good.
let me just throw this, and they might
Go ahead.
they might get offended by this, but if there was a desire on the city's part to fund some money up front,
Mhm.
I mean, that could be accomplished by just a short-term mortgage that gets paid off when they sell it. I mean, the city loans money from time to time for different projects. So if
That's there. Yeah.
if there was a way to front them some money on a short-term basis to get them out the house, then we would pay the city back as paying off the mortgage at the time of the close.
It's no different than a line of
That
credit
could
and it's their money.
That could facilitate.
That will facilitate it. And that's what we're saying. Now let me and yeah, and there is no other thing. It's just their money is being fronted. Let me also say this. And Mr. Brent, I'm gonna ask you to bear with me because I know you're in the middle of all of this, literally. Okay. No, you're in the middle. You're in the middle because there's a role that you play within the title company. But I want to be ever so clear that this idea of like just the first couple getting through, we need this money to be transferred over. And this idea of like, we just need to see a few, it's not about just seeing a few people get through. It's about the material reality of people living on a landfill being able to be relocated. So we understand what that means when a few get through. We understand what that means. It's like, oh, so a few went through. We are telling you people live in Gordon Plaza and they have to be relocated. So this entertaining of like the shuffling going on with the few we're trying to get through, we understand that there's some bigger things attached to that. And we're trying to stay focused because we got a lot of people living in Gordon Plaza that need to get off that landfill. That's when the real victory happens. And we want everybody to be super clear about that. Okay. So with this being said, what I'm hearing is it is possible that a letter can be provided, but this is separate and apart. This is just for people to be able to seriously entertain conversations. People accept their offers. They should be able to get this letter and quickly. All you have to do is the same thing you did with the offer letter is have a template ready to go so people can get their letter. But we also need to resolve this piece in terms of what would be no line of credit, in meaning people paying it back, no line of credit, meaning there's any interest on. We're calling it a line of credit because they don't have the money, but it is their money and they need it. So how can we do that?
Those are legal questions. Those are financial and legal questions.
Come on, Andrew, you part of legal.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think that needs further discussion, to be honest with you.
Say again.
I think that needs further discussion. Financing law.
Yeah. And really, I think the obviously, I mean, the city gets the money back. This is really just money that's given,
Correct.
to you all, so that
Correct.
you can put a deposit down to purchase a new home. Hopefully,
That's
we can
it.
get you that letter, and then that money comes back once you
That's correct.
get. Yeah, I mean, there, and so it's just,
It's
there has
legit,
to
it's
be
technical.
there has to be a way to set this up. I know it's Andrew. I know that it's Andy. Sorry, I know that it's different and never done before, but I really think that there can be this path.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the other part to this. And I just want people to be mindful. We're caring for human beings. So just follow us. Be patient. Is that in this part of the process, this is why we told people, one, we're not really entertaining this 45-day deadline. That's number one. But two, we're also trying to move faster than the 45-day deadline with this. So that offer letter has gone out, but these are the things that have to be resolved, because we'd love for, if this has to be a conversation, conversations need to happen today. And we need to be able to have people leave here knowing that should they pick up the phone and accept their offers, it's not going to be like the vacant lots. There's going to be people who are going to have way more questions for Bayou title, that Bayou shouldn't be in the midst trying to figure something out that the city needs to resolve with all of the people who are about to come down the pathway. We have a few more, we have some critical. Yep.
I mean, I really can't sit here and make a commitment one way or the other without having more discussion.
Okay.
With
So then-
both law. I mean,
then-
because what I don't want to say
Mhm.
is yes, it sounds good and it's logical and it's reasonable, and then for some reason I have to come back and say no, we can't do that. So give us at least a couple days to discuss internally.
Sayo Montano, this is what we'd like to ask. Listen carefully, because people are actively trying to figure this out, and these things are resolvable. Because it would defeat the purpose of having timelines and all this stuff in terms of the offer letters. What we would like to do is say, if there's something you have not resolved today, we need to come back here again tomorrow. We can't come next week. You see what I'm saying? Like, if you legitimately, and hear me out, people, if you legitimately, and I believe you could, get on the phone and talk to people and work through some things, but you need more time to process, we're saying we've got to come back here again tomorrow, because we cannot string this out. Even if there were 3 more things to resolve and we said we come back next week, this needs to all be resolved now, because there's already, follow me, there's already one property owner who has a tenant, and we are ready to move on that and care for the tenant, because this is critical. Okay, now, do we want to keep moving and come back? Because this has to be resolved to get the thing going. I know everybody wants to sound the alarm about victory. We have to move this, because there is no victory until people can access their healthy homes of choice. That is what's critical here, okay? So we're trying to resolve it. We're trying to get there. Okay, so the letter, the transfer of these funds so people can access the money so that they can actually purchase their homes. Go ahead. We understand.
I will be honest, the idea of fronting money like that is giving a little bit of heartburn, and for a couple of reasons, both for law and administrative. I'm not saying.
Can I give you offer you a possible solution to entertain in your conversations with people? Okay, what we would like is for you to say, hey, if there's a letter that people are getting saying the money's coming, that's separate and apart from fronting the money, which is their money. You already agreed that you're gonna pay the money. You're thinking about, oh man, if we give these people this money before, what does that mean for closing and all the other stuff? We're saying to you that part of giving that money is their agreement that they're gonna leave. They're not trying to stay there. We are saying to you, and please take this back to the other members of the administration, that when people can access that, and it is that simple. When people can access this whole process is like skating into the sunset at that point. That is the thing that's holding people back. Money. All right now.
I understand and I appreciate it, but the reality of the situation is anytime when you're dealing with a governmental entity, particularly a state like Louisiana, we are very limited in what we are actually allowed to do and how we have to operate. So it's not a matter of not wanting to help people, it's a matter of doing it within the allowances that a public entity has. And so that's the balancing act with all of this. It's being able to do it in a way that's going to help everybody, in a way that can help people, but while still doing it in a way that
Angela, I think what I would want to do is I really want to get with Brent and Kathy, and obviously Mr. Montano in law and see what can be done. Like, I get it that there's, potential, things to work through and that it's complicated and then it's never been done, but I want to figure out what can be done. But I will tell you this, Angela, I've been trying to talk to Andrew and other people. I can't figure out what can be done and also hear you all at the same time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to need more than right now.
Well, I'll tell you why we're being so adamant, because we actually brought this up at the last Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting, and people said that they would entertain solutions and come with some. So we're coming with some solutions because we know that this is actually possible, and we understand people haven't done it before, but we know it can be done. So if you need to talk, we got to come back tomorrow, because we cannot keep going from week to week. The residents have been beyond patient, and they have decisions that they have to make, life choices that they have to engage, and we have to resolve this. It'd be wonderful if by the time the conversations wrap up this week, Bayou Title already know what they working with. We have to move this forward.
And
Okay.
can I add something? To the extent that you were to get the letter that you're talking about, that would probably be better than not having it.
Yes.
But I can tell you that, I've been practicing law for 30 years.
Mhm.
We've done over 100,000 transactions. We do deal with municipalities and states. The promise of the money and the
Mhm.
money
I
are two
understand.
different things.
That's why we said it's two things.
No, but what I'm just
That's
saying.
why we said
what
we
I'm-
need the
all-
letter
all-
and the money.
All I'm saying is if any resident goes out there and gives a piece of paper that says, the city says I'm getting the money, that's not gonna be any more.
You're
meaningful than what we
correct.
already
That's
have.
why we're saying, what we're saying is, listen to this part. If there is no money yet, residents have to be able to start entertaining conversations with people. But watch this. Just because they have a conversation with somebody doesn't mean they're ready to move on that situation anyway. We want the residents to have access to their money. So if I entertain conversations with 3 different people, number 3, this is about to go somewhere. Now they need to tap into their money to keep it moving forward. That's critical. They have to have the money. Ms. LeDoyne.
As a resident of Gordon Plaza, I go to Grant, get my office, get my money, then what's the next step? As far as me as a resident of Gordon Plaza, and I have accepted the money, where am I gonna go? I can't go buy a house overnight, so will somebody give me an answer? Wait a minute, Sharon. Will somebody give me an answer? As to what is my next process? You're gonna come to 29, 26 and do what?
Right,
Cause at the closing,
pack your
you're
things.
gonna ask for the keys, right?
right. We're gonna pack your thing.
Where we gonna go? Where am I gonna go? Regardless about my name. Speaking of human being,
Yes.
I'm a human being.
Mhm.
I'm not a dog, a cat. I wouldn't put my dog out like that.
Right.
And I'm sure none of y'all in here would do it. So somebody give me an answer. If I come sign that sale tomorrow and get my money that I was promised to me. And I have no money to go purchase the house. So please answer me. Administration, I'm asking for an answer. Law Department, I'm asking for an answer. Mr. Montana, I'm asking for an answer. We've been asking. We've been asking for months. And asking for that. Come back 2 weeks later, you said we're gonna look at it tomorrow. 2 weeks later, it's still not done. You just did say that in the beginning. When we asked, so what we gonna look at, that's what we need to know. What's always the process? So what is the process of when I turn my keys over and I don't have nowhere to go? I want to know what the process is.
Yeah.
What do I do then? You don't want
So
to give me
again-
no money in my hand. You don't want to got me.
So again, for every household, we have already said, every household, all 67 households have the option. If you're an owner occupant or if you're a tenant, if you need somewhere to go and you need to rent a house, you have the option of the $7,200 rental assistance. So yes, go ahead. What?
Answer my question, please.
To go back, you have the option of the rental assistance for 7,200. You have the option, if you so decide, to say like, hey, I need somewhere, I want to get out of there and I want to live I need to live somewhere so I can get out of there while I look for a house. You have the option to rent your house or to rent a new location. We'll give you the $7,200 and you can stay in that location while you safely and comfortably look for a new house.
Andrew.
Those are the options.
Andrew, everybody stop. Because we're getting toward solution and resolve. Okay. I'm not going to ask you to really think about what you just said. I'm not going to do that. Listen to me. Listen to me. If people already live in their house, that ultimately when they vacate, nobody's coming in. Y'all already said you're going to demolish it. We are simply saying it makes no sense for these elders to give $7,200 that's not going to take care of all the things that you just described, by the way, but follow me, to get that money, try to figure out where they're going to move temporarily, take the stuff with them. By the time they call TCA for the moving company for that one move, who going to move them the second time? And what happens when they exhaust the $7,200, still trying to find a house? It makes no sense, Andrew. What we're saying, and listen, this not under necessary pressure if you haven't got it figured out right this second. We are asking you to hear what the people are contending with, because if you understand what people are contending with, we can solve for it. Because you keep coming back talking about the do, and we're telling you people cannot go anywhere without money. And even if they get the $7,200 as owner occupied, separate from the renters, because the renters are going to move away and the owners are doing a thing. If they're in the property and they get the $7,200, it makes no sense for them to move somewhere else for a second time and still not know if they have enough money to finish paying the rent for however long it takes to sit. And once again, all that has to happen, and I'm going to solutions in a second, because we brought this up in the last meeting, and Mr. Threat said, as one of the property managers for the city, that he would consider what some options are. And there are options. There are options.
I will tell you that as far as letting people stay in the properties,
Mhm.
the city cannot and will not serve as a land, even for a short time. We cannot do it. Now, again, it's this process that we are going through. It is a new process for us, but you have to understand, this is a process where the city has determined that we have a project, a public works project that we are going to use your properties for. And this is a process that we have found this is the only way that we have found to be able to provide any relocation or to purchase the houses in a way that does not violate the law. So in order to do this process, this is not a perfect process. Hold on. This is a process that will allow us to provide certain amounts of compensation and certain types of compensation.
We
When those
understand
limits
all
are
of
passed,
that.
that's what's within our power. Is it going to be?
We understand all
So
of that.
that's
That
what's
part we're
gonna
clear on.
happen.
Follow me on this. Listen, this is why I'm leaning in on solutions. Listen carefully, CAO Montano, because I know they're going to need this when we talk. let me just get these go ahead.
Oh, y'all plan on putting solar where North Plaza is. Is that the solution that you want to use? What we gonna do while you try to put a solar panel on that particular problem? North Plaza. You gotta get us out of this. You might as well take.
Correct. That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. Let's go to solution here. And the reason I'm just cautioning you, Andrew, about being so quick to say what can and cannot happen is you got to remember 2 meetings ago, people were saying we can't do more than 4,000. We're at a different place. It's good news because of what's possible under the law. What's also possible under the law, if people are trying to problem solve, is you could say, you know what? These are our properties. The city of New Orleans will own these properties. We could easily take the stress off these people and come up with a little temporary leasing agreement where they could stay in their properties during that time until they're ready to move. Ain't nobody trying to stay there forever. And your leasing agreement does not have to absorb people's money because the big dog shot callers have properties all around here that they stay in for free,
Come on now.
and or they paying $10 a month to stay somewhere. So what we're saying is you could easily do, and the good news is every single resident may or may not need this, but you got to open up for access. If a resident says, I need to stay in my property, which they don't want to do, by the way, this is only to help get them across the board. They would easily have Mr. Threat drop a very basic non-red tape pro-closing lease agreement where they could easily stay in their properties for another month or 2, 3, 4, 6 months, however many months they need to be able to move this on. Because, and the residents have already been saying that, you know, you all have actually been saying, oh, you can stay in your house up to a year. We're here now saying minimally people could stay in their house for 6 months, but the average person don't want to be there that long. It's all about need. You could easily draw up a post-closing lease agreement that does not break them and let them stay in their house. They don't want to be there. They just need a cushion to not, this entire community is being displaced. So they just need some transition in it. Everybody's saying you got your offer letters, you're good. This is displacement of an entire community. And we're just trying to cushion this to make it a little smoother for people. That's it. And I know that you can do that. The answer is yes. The answer is yes. It is possible to do.
So again, there's a lot more that goes into being a landlord than just drawing up the agreement and holding onto the property. Again, the city is not designed to be a residential landlord for anybody, whether it's for a month, a year, or a day.
Andrew, you don't want to open that up today.
So,
You don't want to do that.
and
You listen, sir,
who's been doing?
you do not want to talk about people's ability to stay in housing that is owned by the city of New Orleans. That's disrespectful at this point. Totally disrespectful. When we're talking about people who are literally trying to get off the landfill and ain't trying to get over on the city. These are people who are simply trying to get transition into their new home. And once this is resolved, because Mr. Threat or whoever can easily put together a temporary leasing agreement. And here's the other good news. The residents of Gordon Plaza community has been pretty much neglected by the city of New Orleans the time they've been there. So the best thing that the city could do is actually say thank you to them for being there a little while longer. That's the truth. So people are not trying to stay there. This is resolvable. And I'm just going to say one more time that the reason we're offering these suggestions and solutions that we know are possible is because at the end of the day, it's going to make it all go that much more smoothly. Every single time folks from the law department, bless all y'all hearts, come back talking about we can't do, we come to the next meeting and realize it's been discovered that that's not true. So let us create solutions to solve these problems, because it works in everybody's interest for the residents to be able to move and move smoothly. So if y'all need to talk, take the time you need to talk. We will come back tomorrow because we cannot come back here next week. Well, we'll have to come back and keep the party going because we need to move this forward. Go ahead.
Be out of my location. All right. My issue is I'm a single female. All right. I don't make 4 times the rent these people look for. All right. I have 2 dogs that are my protection because New Orleans is fucked up. Right. No one wants to accept my pet. Oh, I have to give them up or anything like that. $7,200 is not enough for me to move. Even with what I have saved up. If I go move to a place that's $1,300, because I did the fucking math, that's $22,000. Yeah. One wedding, $600. That's what I'm saying. So, what you said earlier with the rental, the plan for the rental, I have to wait till my landlord goes to closing to provide y'all with this information. Do you know how many houses I have walked out on already? It's my off day looking for houses that I can't even fucking fit in. So I'm looking like even with your $7,200, I'm still out $7,200. Find me a place to stay that's going to accept my community dogs that y'all have deemed fucking aggressive, and they're the sweetest things on earth. But a landlord don't give a shit. They're pit bulls, but they're my pit bulls. They are my children. I don't have any children. These are my girls, and I'm not gonna leave them, and I'm not gonna give them to anybody else. So what do I do? Oh, dude, these is my shit. I love to move into it. Years ago, it wasn't even fucking notified that that was the situation. I'm quiet.
Right.
Yeah.
For me to save up $2,200 just to
No, I'm gonna.
and last month.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Angela, we got to come up with next steps. I want to have the opportunity to sit down, as I mentioned, with our friends at Bayou Title, along with Mr. Montano in law, so that we can figure out. I want to go back to what we had been talking about. Don't get me wrong, ma'am. The rental assistance piece, there we need the process.
Just
is
one
done
more
now.
one more thing, if we can just say real quick. Thank you, sis. Because here's the thing. The reason we brought this up last time is because we didn't want her or the rest of the residents to have to go through this turmoil once again this week. We brought it up last week so we could get resolved today. And even with the resolve today, just follow me. because everybody came to this table already saying the $7,200, minimally somebody should have been able to come to the table to say how quickly you could get that 72 right now. And that hasn't been resolved. So we need this ASAP, which is why there's no celebratory conversation about somebody who has to move, who has a renter, because we don't have a place for the renter to go yet. So this has to be resolved, and it can't wait till next week. So sis, we're gonna hold it down in your absence tomorrow, like we always do. We need resolve on that, and we haven't heard anybody speak about the relocation costs at the level that is even deemed appropriate. Because even in the own legislation that you presented, there are multiple categories right in that packet that are cared for in that residence request. And the only thing that was mentioned today was utilities. Last time people said, oh, there's nothing on here. Now today it's utilities. The rest of those things need to be examined. We need to come back here tomorrow. We don't have next week.
Residents have done all the work.
Because it's unfair that we were told promises, and it's just like this young lady now she has to scramble up and figure out a life. Like, that's not good. That's not the city of New Orleans.
And I know you all don't care, but we have a resident right now that had a heart attack last week. The doctor said they couldn't figure out why he had the heart attack.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to resolving this for today with, well, I know, ma'am, I know, but I'm going to try to work toward it. Okay. When we're talking about the assistance on the purchases of the new home, and we talked about the letters, and we talked about the potential funding for deposits, I think that that's really important. And I truly do believe that there has to be some type of path toward that.
It is resolvable.
Yeah. So I've talked to Mr. Montano about times to meet tomorrow. He said that I need to meet with Norman White as well. And so he needs to figure out a path for me to meet with him tomorrow. I do want to bring in Bayou Title folks into that meeting to see like what can be done. So what I'm saying here is I don't know what time everyone's going to be available, but I will make myself available to try to wrangle everybody together to see if we can come up with something. That being said, though, I'm being totally honest with you all. I don't know if I will have the answer tomorrow. I'm going to try to have it this week, but I don't know if I'm going to have it tomorrow. I'm just being honest with y'all. I don't want you to come back and then I'm going to say, I couldn't get Norman White, or I didn't have a meeting, or we talked in
Here's
circles.
what I'd like to recommend. We need to meet every single day this week until it's resolved. We need to go into this weekend with this resolved. So if there's 2 or 3 things that get resolved tomorrow and one more that hangs over, because each and every one of these items still requires action. Let me just name the things real quick and then we're going to go, because this is serious. Number 1, we heard your report back on the moving service payment agreement with TCA. We've been talking about this for weeks. TCA already been in the equation long before this recent conversation. We asked TCA to go forward to start engaging the companies. They have done that because they saw it. All we were waiting on was the mayor's signature, and this was supposed to go forward. Last time you said in the meeting, just going to be 1 day turnaround. It's not today, probably tomorrow. We're here a week later, and people still talking about that agreement. 2 weeks. Then with the temporary housing, minimally, because I also have some more updates in terms of the renter piece, By the time we get here tomorrow, people should be able to say point blank, here's how you're going to get your $7,200 immediately. Because minimally, if people can get their $7,200 immediately, then at least puts them in a place to secure the place that they have. And so any rent they have been paying before can now go to into the future. They have to have a cushion and a safety net. And people are not sitting around allowing people on a hope and wish and prayer, holding on to a place. People need that money and they need it ASAP. And then the last couple of things, you've just named the two majors in terms of the closing to get us talking about moving date, but going back to that 6-day window that was just happened here, that whole process involves people who live in Gordon Plaza. We got to resolve this relocation cost piece, because coming back and saying, oh, utilities is possible, but the rest of the things we're not sure. The legislation that y'all passed out, the package you passed out, has all those categories in it. So it was our understanding that you were taking all last week to go through those things to come with a resolve. And I asked the question very pointedly, when do y'all have time to work during the day? What are y'all working on that you know we're coming back again and you got the same answer as last week? We need to come back tomorrow at 4 o'clock, and we have to have these things knocked out. These things that are pressing here could be resolved. And we're hoping that even the things that people can't promise right now, hopefully maybe there can be some breakthroughs by tomorrow. Because the sooner we have breakthroughs, the sooner we can all just move this process forward.
So Angela, I'll tell you this, I'm happy to meet with you all at 4 o'clock. We cannot do a public meeting though. That's like an official public meeting due to the notice requirements though, because we're already past the 24-hour notice, but I'm happy to have the meeting if we just want to have a catch-up meeting. If you want to have an officially noticed public meeting, then we have to have the 24-hour notice.
Here's what we would like to do. We're going to keep coming back here at 4 o'clock each day this week. And if Thursday's on the public calendar, so be it, but we're coming back because we need resolve on this. Unfortunately, we can't trust y'all to say, if you come back 3 days from now, we're going to have an answer, because it's been a whole week. 2 weeks. 2 years. 42 years. We need resolve. And we're so close.
Yeah, we're so close. I agree. We're close. I'll be back at 4 here tomorrow. I'll try to have as many answers as possible. I'm hoping the CAO can be here
Are you
to
available
join me as well.
Montano at 4 o'clock? We're not trying to be in here long. We need answers.
What I haven't checked my calendar. I don't know, but I need to, there's no point if I don't have new information at 4 o'clock. There's just not. I mean, that's just, I mean, it would just be meeting to get more frustrations aired. So I would have to find out tomorrow. If I haven't checked my calendar, but for the purposes of productivity, if there's nothing that is resolved,
CO Montano,
and
this is the part I want to just help.
Here's the other part is that I came to the meeting understanding a process that needed to be done, which was transferring money, and that's the first 3 closings. And I get it. I wasn't in the last meeting prior to this, but the whole new fronting, advancing money piece, the new fronting on rental assistance, this is new, and it sounds like information that requires
it's not
due
new.
diligence to me.
Yes.
And
that's why we need you to come, because these are really
Hang on.
resolvable things.
This room is booked tomorrow.
Okay, well, we didn't, what's
Hang
open?
on. Yeah, you're right. The whole thing's not booked. What's our conference room look like? Although we're not going to be able to fit everybody. Yeah. Yeah, we only have. All right, so this room is booked tomorrow. I'll find another room within City Hall that can accommodate more than 15 people.
We're gonna honor the residents' inquiry here. The question on the table is, residents, it's just a yes or no. They saying they need time, the public meeting on Thursday, they all available Thursday. We could come back here tomorrow, or we can give them till Thursday to resolve this. The key is, yeah, yes, 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 we have to.
I like your idea to come back every day.
Angela, and in all candor, because I feel like we can have an open dialogue, and in all candor, if the answer turns out to be no, if the answer does turn out to be no, I'm saying hypothetically, when do we start moving to the next levels
Listen,
of
here, but here's
I
the
mean, 'cause
thing.
at some
But
point,
Mr. Montano, yes, thank you. Let's do this real quick. The thing is, there's 6 things on that agenda, sir. And none
I guess
of them.
I'm referring to the fronting, the ones that's
I
it's
know,
giving me heartache
I know,
is the
but
fronting
listen.
of the money and before we have something that we are
I
taking.
know, but Mr. Montano, listen. The issue is that all of those 6 things are connected. So if it's the case that people cannot get access to money, we're back to square one. People have to have access to money to go somewhere. And here's the thing. We understand that renter or owner, they have to have access to money to go somewhere. This is why we're pressing so hard, Mr. Montano, because even if you weren't dealing with the complexity of the owner situation, the renter part is super, super easy. We talked through it for almost 6 months, getting it together with TCA, only for y'all to come back and say, Trick, we're going to do it a whole different way, and have no operational procedure to carry it out. So sis back here is expressing herself justifiably so, because she actually should be coming up in here to get her money today. That's what should be happening. And we had to come to the table to talk about it being 72, or she'd have been saying she can't go nowhere with $4,000. So we're asking you all to take this process seriously, and we want to come back and have an actual answer. Because as much as there's the talk back and forth about let's move the first 3 through, you talking about it being lit up around here, around what that means for people still living on the landfill. Who around here talking about that's the demonstration that it's working when people are still living in Gordon Plaza? Absolutely not. It can't be. And it's resolvable. Yes.
To understand, if we go to closing and we get money, you say that we have to turn our keys over that same day. It is humanly impossible. And for you to say that and believe it.
So let me explain. Andrew's been working his butt off on this. I know there's a pejorative. Look, I will defend the employees that are doing this, and I'll explain my face. There's a humanizing piece that's probably you're seeing on our face because it's logical. I get it. If you don't have money to go buy another house, what in the world can you do? You're stuck. I get it. No, I get it. I understand in complete candor the terrible cycle this is, but why my face is chagrining so much is unfortunately because of the change we have on these legal agreements as being a government entity. I don't know how to solve it right now. So I don't know if we know how to solve it. I don't know if we're going to be able to solve it because I understand how in the world can we move forward if you don't legally solve it,
we said to you, it is as simple as you putting together
a lease agreement. And I don't know if that, I don't want to just give any response yet because that is something that has also been discussed and starkly pushed against and by a lot of different dynamics.
By who?
Several different, both, I won't go into the inner machinations.
That matters,
nothing political. This has everything to do with
it's all
feasibility. No, I promise you, the figuring this part out, you all don't have to believe or trust me. I assure you, there's not political touches on this at all. This is figuring out how to do it properly, legally, and in the most efficient process. The political dynamics is not a piece of it at all. It's legitimately. I know that.
So
Getting a valuable lesson from the residents of Gordon Plaza, so you need to put this into consideration. These are lives at stake. You're still living on a toxic landfill. This can be done. It's simple and easy. We're giving you solutions. That's what we trying to do. We bring everything to y'all, and we all did that.
We brought the solution to you. But you're saying you can't do something. I can understand if you say you can't, but use the solution that you got. For the people to move off the land. We giving you the answer. Use that answer unless you have a better answer.
Yeah.
You-
All right.
Unless you have a better-
If it was a matter of us being able to say yes, right? If it was a matter, there's not a reluctance to say yes. It's just what am I legally allowed to do? And I know
Oh, because the legal shit that y'all use, when you find out.
All right, hang on.
It was illegal.
Hang on, sir. Hang on, y'all. He's been wanting to speak, sir.
Maybe Frank could tell me this. But I guess you close a lot of houses. Not every house you close in possession had closed. Some of them given some time period before the actual person has to move out. Sometimes it could be weeks or whatever. It don't have to be.
I will tell you that it does happen, but it's very rare. But once again, this is a different, I would have to yield to the assistant city attorney that there may be limitations as to why the city can't. But to answer your question, if we probably close 500 transactions, it might be one like that. It's very rare. Yeah. Look, it's I understand that. Well, once again, I can't speak to the city's limitations as to why they can't, but I mean, it doesn't happen that often, but I will tell you that, we do a lot of transactions and it seems hard because I know what y'all are dealing with, but it's typically you buy and sell the same day. And and sellers, the buyers move in, the sellers move out, and a seller never has the money to get into the next house until they sell this house. And that's how it usually goes. But that's not to say that y'all aren't justified in asking the questions.
Yeah,
But that-
and right.
It's rare.
Look, I think
No,
the
legally it
questions.
can happen, but I can't
Yeah.
speak for the city. I don't know
No
what the
doubt,
city's
no
limitations
doubt,
are.
Brent. No, I think that the questions are important, and I think it's important to try to figure out a path, and figure out that path so that you all can go find that new home and figure out like how you can have some type of funding so that you can, put that purchase agreement done and move into that new home. So Angela, what was decided on
You said-
tomorrow or Thursday?
They're saying.
All right, Thursday.
So here's the thing.
Hang on real quick. Just,
Mhm.
I want to just put this out there. Thursday, we do not have a room at this point. I will find one because this room is booked and the council chamber is having all the issues. So we will find a room that's this space, this size, so that we can all be in here.
Is there anything, there's nothing that would, the meeting for Thursday, there's nothing prohibiting an update being provided tomorrow about where you all are. Because we feel that, if there's no update, nothing's been resolved yesterday either, and we're waiting on Thursday. Like, we need to see that something is shown. We have 6 things on this agenda. And we don't have updates on any of those 6 things. Yeah. Yes.
And we can all sit at the table, the law department, whatever, and get this resolved. And I promise you, life after that will be easier for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
For all parties. There should be an emergency meeting. But he's not saying.
The
yes,
people- Right, because the people who people keep turning to saying, we got to talk to somebody, those people need to be in the room.
All right, I will work as hard as possible to get these issues resolved, at least get you answers to them as much as I can. 1 o'clock on Thursday, you can't do 4? No. Okay.
It can be done in one day. It's supposed to be resolved today.
Hang on a second. I'm trying to make sure that Mr. Montano can be here for Thursday's meeting. 1 o'clock on Thursdays when he can do it. Can you'll do 1 o'clock? 1 o'clock on Thursday? All right, 1 o'clock on Thursday. I'm gonna circle up with these guys over here and try to figure out the path. 1 o'clock. All right.
Tanya, I need to name this for people who are in the room. If we come in here at 1 o'clock on Thursday, we need resolve around these issues. We need people to problem solve. We cannot come back here on Thursday with the same stuff. We cannot.
Right. And that's why I said in the beginning, I mean, there could be a no on this, right? And I'm not saying that that's what we would want, but I mean, it has to be understood that if we have to say a no, and that's the handcuffs we have, I hope it's not two. I hope it's not two. That's why I hope it's collective too, because I mean, we've come so far to have this last piece across the deal. I mean, one way or another, that's where I'm hoping we'll be.
Whoever is a part of decision making, because we got some big stompers in this room right now. So whoever you all feel like you still need to talk with and problem solve, they need to come on Thursday. Like whoever's outside this room that's has to be consulted with, they need to be present.
Okay, so the meeting, according to Paul, can be in the chamber. Thursday will be the first day back in the chamber. So in council chambers at 1 o'clock on Thursday. All right, we'll see y'all there. Thank you all.
And you went to fighting the project, those are the ones that need to be on there.